Dear students, in the previous video, we discussed about the evolution and the important terms and concepts related to the evolution. We discussed about the origin of universe, origin of solar system and earth, and we were discussing about the origin of life. Origin of life is basically supported by two sets of theories, and these two sets of theories are ancient theories and modern theories. जब हम एंशियंट थ्योरीज की बात कर रहे हैं उनमें से कुछ जो इम्पोर्टेंट थ्योरीज हैं उसके बारे में यहाँ पर हम चर्चा करेंगे। और सबसे पहली जो थ्योरी है जो कि एंशियंट थ्योरीज के अंडर हम रखते हैं, दैट इज थ्योरी ऑफ स्पेशल क्रिएशन। This theory was put forward by Father Soares and was supported by Milton. Obviously, he was a Christian priest, and according to this theory, the life was created by the God. As far as this theory is concerned, it believes that the God created the life in 6 days, as is mentioned in the Bible, the holy book of Christians. On the very first day, heaven and earth was created. On the second day, God separated water from the sky. On third day, dry lands and plants were created. Fourth day, sun, moon, and stars were created by the God. On the fifth day, birds and fishes were created, and on the last, that is on sixth day, human beings and land animals were created. And the first man was Adam, and first woman was Eve. Similarly, when we talk about the Hindu mythology, the life was created by Lord Brahma, which was considered as the god of creation. And the first man was Manu, and first woman was Shraddha. As there is no scientific evidence to support this theory, so this theory is straight away discarded by the modern science. The next theory we talk about is theory of spontaneous creation. It also has some other alternative names. It is also known as theory of abiogenesis or theory of autogenesis. This theory believes that the life was created spontaneously from the inorganic or non-living substances on the earth. There had been many Greek philosophers like Thales, Anaximander, Xenophanes, Plato and Aristotle who believed in this theory. Similarly, it was also believed by Egyptians that the mud of the river Nile also have the properties to give rise to the life. They believed if the mud of river Nile is kept for few days in the sun, it can give rise to mice, rats, and even to the crocodile. But as there are no scientific evidences to prove this theory, so this theory was also discarded. Moreover, there had been experiments by some scientists just to disapprove this theory and these scientists were, first one was Francisco Redi. He was an Italian scientist, and he conducted an experiment that he took 3 distilled jars and kept a boiled meat in all these 3 jars. The first jar was kept open, second jar was covered with parchment paper, and third jar was covered with muslin cloth. And he kept these jars for weeks together as it is. And when he observed that maggots appeared in the first jar, which was kept open, while there were no sign of any life in the jar 2 and jar 3. He simply explained that onto the jar which was kept open, the flies visited, they went up to the piece of flesh and laid egg over there, and it helped in thriving the colonies of microorganisms. But the flies were not able to reach the flesh kept in the jar number 2 and jar number 3. So this theory totally disapproved the theory of, this experiment totally disapproved the theory of spontaneous creation. There was another scientist, obviously he was an Italian scientist, Lazzaro Spallanzani. What he did, he simply boiled the broth for many hours and kept this boiled broth in a sealed jar for weeks and months together, and there were no signs of any life. But when he uncovered this jar and kept it for a few days, the colonies of microorganisms started appearing in this jar, which again indicated that the life might have originated from the pre-existing life. And obviously it disapproved this theory of spontaneous creation. And similarly, a very famous scientist, Louis Pasteur, he also conducted one of his very famous experiments just to disapprove this theory of spontaneous creation, or in the support of the theory of biogenesis. What he did, he took a swan neck flask. And in this swan neck flask, he again took this broth and boiled it for hours together. Obviously, this is the stand on which this swan neck flask is supported. And kept this swan neck flask after boiling the broth for hours together as it is, and there were no sign of life in this flask. But when he broke this swan neck, he observed after a few days that the colonies of microorganisms started appearing in this flask, which again disapproved this theory of spontaneous creation, and it supported the theory about which we will be talking just in a few moments, that is the third theory, that is theory of biogenesis. This theory was given by T.H. Huxley in the year 1884, and this theory believed that life have originated from the pre-existing life. लेकिन ये जो pre-existing life है, ये कैसे originate हुई, इसके बारे में ये theory बिल्कुल खामोश है. This theory is not able to explain that how and where this pre-existing life originated. That is why this theory was again discarded. There is another theory, that is cosmozoid theory. Cosmozoid theory of origin of life, and this theory was given by Helmholtz. And he believed that the life might have come onto the earth from some outer space. कि पृथ्वी पर जो भी जीवन है वो किसी बाहरी अंतरिक्ष से पृथ्वी पर आया है। लेकिन ये थ्योरी ये एक्सप्लेन करने में, ये प्रूव करने में असफल रही है कि बाहरी अंतरिक्ष की जो एक्सट्रीम कंडीशंस होती है उसमें ये लाइफ जब ट्रेवल करी आउटर स्पेस के थ्रू पृथ्वी तक, किस तरह से उस एक्सट्रीम कंडीशंस को इसने सस्टेन किया और सरवाइव किया। हालांकि आज भी बहुत से वैज्ञानिक इस थ्योरी में बिलीव करते हैं, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली ऑरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ को एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए और स्पेसिफिकली कि किस तरह से अंतरिक्ष से जो जीवन है पृथ्वी पर आया और किस तरह से उस एक्सट्रीम कंडीशंस को अपनी जर्नी के दौरान उसने सस्टेन किया, उसको ये थ्योरी एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर पाई है, इसलिए इसे भी डिस्कार्ड कर दिया गया है। और हमारे पास जो प्रेजेंट डे थ्योरी है जिसको हम कहते हैं मॉडर्न थ्योरी ऑफ ओरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ, और इट इज ऑल्सो नॉन एज ओपेराइन हेल्डेन थ्योरी of origin of life. This is the most acceptable theory of origin of life in the present time, and we shall be discussing this theory in greater detail. Dear students, as far as the modern theory of origin of life is concerned, this theory was given by A.I. Oparin, who was a Russian scientist, and J.B.S. Haldane, who was an English scientist who later on settled in India at Odisha, Bhubaneswar. According to this theory, the life have originated from the simple atoms which, with the passage of time due to the changing environmental conditions on the earth, got converted into complex inorganic molecules, followed by simple organic molecules, then complex organic molecules, and later on led to the formation of coacervates, proteinoid microspheres, prokaryotic cells, and ultimately the eukaryotic cells. So here we can divide this theory basically into two headings, and these are chemical evolution and biological evolution. जैसा कि यहाँ पर हम ऑरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ की बात कर रहे हैं, तो किस तरह से सिंपल एटम्स थे जो वो चेंज हुए प्रोग्रेसिवली कॉम्प्लेक्स ऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल्स और इनऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल्स, और इनऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल से ऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल्स में उसके जो चेंजिंग के प्रोसेसेस थे उसको हमने कहा है केमिकल एवोल्यूशन, क्योंकि वर्ड एवोल्यूशन हम यहाँ पर यूज कर रहे हैं, विच इन अ सिंपलेस्ट, इन अ लेमन टर्म्स, which means a continuous change or continuous progressive change. And similarly, the simple aggregates or coacervates got converted with the changing conditions and with the passage of time into the present day eukaryotic cells. That is why we have named it as biological evolution or the change or biological change from simple coacervates or microspheres into the present day eukaryotic cells. So students, when we talk about the chemical evolution, so on the earliest time, approximately when we were talking about 4 billion years ago, there might have been the simple atoms present on the earth such as nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, iron, copper. All these elements might have been present in their simplest form, and to this phase we can call it as the atomic phase. And as these elements, few were very heavy elements which got sunk towards the core of the earth, and there were few lighter elements such as nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen which remained there on the top layer. So these nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, etc., they made the outermost layers or atmosphere of the earliest earth. With the passage of time, these simple atoms got converted into simple inorganic molecules. And these how these simple inorganic molecules might have been formed, such as there were present hydrogen and oxygen, they might have reacted with each other to form water molecules, which were obviously present in the vapor form, as the earlier earth, as on the earlier earth the temperature was very high. Similarly, this hydrogen might have reacted with nitrogen to form ammonia, and similarly the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide and other such simple inorganic molecules were formed. These simple inorganic molecules got transformed into some complex molecules such as nitrides, carbides, etc., which later on paved the path for the formation of simple organic molecules. Simple organic molecules, simple organic molecules such as simple sugars, amino acids, glycerols and fatty acids, etc. So this had been the process which is considered under the chemical evolution, and these simple organic molecules later on formed complex organic molecules such as polysaccharides, proteins, lipids, and later on as DNA and RNA. And there is an experiment, that is Stanley-Miller experiment, which prove this chemical evolution, about which we will be talking later on after discussing about the biological evolution. When we talk about the biological evolution, as there had been present all these complex organic, simple organic and inorganic molecules inside the water body, to which a term was given by J.B. Haldane as the hot dilute soup of organic substances. All these substances were called hot dilute soup of organic substances by J.B.S. Haldane. J.B.S. Haldane. And obviously these complex organic substances present inside the water, it forms a system to which a term is given, and this is called probiotics. They're called, prebiotic molecules or we can say it as a prebiotic systems. Why system? Because there had been the aggregation or congregation of all these simple and complex organic molecules. And these prebionts are divided into two main categories, to which we call as coacervates and microspheres. Coacervates and microspheres. What these coacervates are? Coacervates are simply the congregation of aggregation of polysaccharides, proteins with water. As these coacervates, according to operand, they were able to carry out all the metabolic activities, but very important aspect of life, that is reproduction, was absent in these coacervates. Later on in the year 1950, Sidney Fox conducted an experiment. What he did, he took approximately 18 amino acids and mixed them with the polysaccharides and lipids and heated them for 130 to I think 180 degrees Celsius, and to his astonishment he was able to find out some specific microspheres or some specific entities, to which he called proteinoid microsphere. He called these microspheres as proteinoid microspheres. इन प्रोटीनॉइड माइक्रोस्फीयर्स की खासियत क्या थी? क्योंकि इसमें प्रोटीन्स थे, पॉलीसैकेराइड्स थे, लिपिड्स थे, वाटर मॉलिक्यूल थे, सो देयर हैड बीन अ सेपरेशन लेयर ऑफ लिपिड व्हिच is the precursor of the present day biomembrane or plasma membrane, and along with carrying out all the metabolic activities, these proteinoid microspheres were able to carry out the process of reproduction, means they were able to produce the other proteinoid microspheres similar to them. So from here we can trace out the beginning of the modern life. And all proteinoid microsphere, some prokaryotic cells were formed, and all this happened approximately 3 billion years ago. And as this prokaryotic system kept on working, they were able to carry out some heterotrophic mode of nutrition. As whole of the organic molecules got consumed, they resorted to autotrophic mode of nutrition. And obviously the chemoautotrophism might have been the earlier mode of autotrophic nutrition, which later on, with the passage of time and with the changing scenario, got converted into phototropic mode of autotropism, to which we call as the photosynthesis. And later on, as the ozone layer were also formed and the photosynthesis process had also been started, there had been the change in the environmental condition. The earlier reducing atmosphere was also converted into the oxidizing atmosphere due to the generation of oxygen. So these prokaryotic cells, with the passage of time, got converted into present day eukaryotic cells, and all these changes might have taken place 1.5 billion years ago approximately. And as these prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells have been formed from coacervates or from proteinoid microspheres, there had been a continuous change and the process of evolution. That is, the biological evolution still continues after these eukaryotic cells, which led to the formation of present day complex forms of life. Earlier, we were talking about the chemical evolution, and there was an experiment that is known as Urey-Miller experiment to explain the happening of this chemical evolution. Just to support this phenomenon of chemical evolution, so here we will be talking about that Stanley-Miller experiment. स्टूडेंट्स, जैसा कि हमने मॉडर्न थ्योरी ऑफ ओरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ में पढ़ा कि लाइफ ओरिजिनेट हुई है सिंपल ऑर्गेनिक इनऑर्गेनिक एटम्स से, जो कि बाद में कॉम्प्लेक्स इनऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल्स में कन्वर्ट हुए और उसके बाद उससे कॉम्प्लेक्स ऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल्स बने, एंड विच अल्टीमेटली पेव्ड द पाथ फॉर कोएसरवेट्स एंड प्रोटीनॉइड माइक्रोस्फीयर्स। यहां पर इस बात को, इस केमिकल एवोल्यूशन को प्रूव करने के लिए एक साइंटिस्ट स्टैनली मिलर, जो कि हेरोल्ड सी यूरे के ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट थे इन शिकागो यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ यूएसए, he designed an experimental setup, and in this experimental setup the conditions were set as were present on the primitive earth. He provided here a spark chamber in which the electrodes were present, which just mimicked the condition as were present on the primitive earth, as there had been continuous lightning, thunders, and continuous shower of ultraviolet radiations on the primitive earth. And he took methane, ammonia and hydrogen and the water vapors from this side into this spark chamber, and this system was continuously rotated. All these substances were continuously rotated and just put to these sparks continuously for many days. And ultimately they were able to separate some simple organic molecules from this experimental setup, and hence this experiment proved that the chemical evolution have definitely took place on the primitive earth, which paved the path for the biological evolution or the formation of coacervates, proteinoid microspheres, prokaryotic and ultimately the eukaryotic cells. Later on, many other scientists modified these experiments, and obviously they were able to separate many more complex organic molecules. Hence, the modern theory of origin of life is also proved by many experiments, and this is the most acceptable theory of origin of life in the present day situation. Students, as earlier we had talked that we'll be discussing the chapter evolution under the two main headings. One was the origin of life, which we have just completed, and from the next class or from the next video we'll be talking about the evolution part, and in that part we'll be discussing about the various phenomenon and various terms related to the evolution. Till then, take care and